I tell you, ladies, you do not know how much joy you'll have until you smash, smash, smash. That was said by Carrie Nation. Miss Nation was a member of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, who sought to end drinking in America. They accomplished this by staging marches and holding prayer rallies outside of saloons. She had a different idea. She would take her trusty hatchet and a bag full of weights called smashers, go into saloons, and just destroy everything. She would smash tables, chairs, and of course, liquor bottles. Now that might seem a bit excessive, but it wasn't the most extreme measure taken to end drinking in America. That would be Prohibition. According to John Elfton, in an article for Statista, July 27, 2022, Americans drink about 2.5 gallons of liquor a year. That number has remained fairly consistent since the 1850s. However, during the 1920s, it was cut in half. This was, of course, Prohibition. Now, I love history, as does most of my family, and Prohibition's always been one of my favorite time periods to look at. So, I wanted to look at it, see if I could explain why it happened, what happened during Prohibition, and how it finally came to an end. So why did America decide it needed to sober up? In Lawrence Mark Straub's book, Smashing the Liquor Machine, A Global History of Prohibition, published by the Oxford University Press, he states that the Temperance Union was created in response to the fact that men would go to saloons and spend all of their money there. They would spend nights, the entire night there, drinking all night, passing out, waking up, and drinking some more. Spend all the money they had earned, and when they didn't have any more of that, selling the shirts off their backs to buy more. The Temperance Union was created by their wives to get their husbands out of the saloons and back with their families, where they belonged. Now, the Temperance Union had some success. They were able to close some saloons across the nation. But it would later be one man in particular, Wayne Wheeler, who would be the father of Prohibition. Wayne Wheeler was head of the Anti-Saloon League. And under him, he was able to unite people of vastly different economic and social backgrounds and competing ideologies to get politicians elected out of office who opposed him and get politicians who supported Prohibition elected. This, of course, eventually led to the ratification of the 18th Amendment, which stated that the manufacture and sale of liquor would be illegal in United States soil. So now that America was dry, what happened? Well, almost immediately after this law was put into effect, Americans tried to get around it. In Edward Bear's book, Prohibition, 13 Years That Changed America, published by RK Publishing, he notes that the ways they did this was pretty simple in some cases. Maybe they would just make their own moonshine out in their backyard, out in the woods, somewhere away from prying eyes. Or they'd find a religion, as religious figures, priests, rabbis, could still order and purchase sacramental wine. After they got the wine, they could then sell the excess to their followers. But there was another group who sought to fill the vacuum. Criminal families, organizations, saw the big demand there was for alcohol and immediately stepped in to fill it. They took control of liquor flows from Canada and Mexico and began to amass huge amounts of power and wealth, buying off police and politicians so that they could stay scot-free out of jail. It wasn't all bad though. This need for secrecy when it came to alcohol also encouraged the creation of speakeasies, secret clubs where societal norms began to break down, where men and women began to drink together, where people of different backgrounds all converged and mingled and socialized together in a way that hadn't been seen before. But for all of this was going on, America started to get sick of all the violence and bloodshed going on between bootleggers and the law. It began to turn public opinion against Prohibition. Now, the reason for this was twofold. One, of course, was the violence. Gang members engaged in open warfare across cities, which would turn anybody against any law when you got people dying in the streets over it. But the other was the way the law worked. You see, the gang members, they had money, they had power, and whenever they got arrested, they usually got out scot-free. But if your average Joe was arrested, he could expect to get the full weight of the law thrown at him sometimes. People who imprisoned for life for making moonshine at their house, not even selling it, just making it. Another factor that led to its downfall, though, was the death of Wayne Wheeler. Wayne Wheeler died in 1927, and he was really the driving personality behind Prohibition. Without him there to sort of corral everybody, more and more people came out against it. Politicians began to speak out against it, decry the violence in the streets, the unfairness, the corruption and unfairness in the judicial system. And eventually this led to the only time in American history when the Constitutional Amendment has been repealed. The 21st Amendment officially repealed the 18th. And Prohibition was put to an end in 1933. So, Prohibition was a wild and crazy time. One of my favorite times. And it led to a lot of changes in America that we still see today. Drinking is now a lot more socially acceptable, but also more inclusive. Everybody goes out to drinks. Your friends, your girlfriends, your husbands, your wives, everybody goes out together to drink. It's because of Prohibition that's possible. And I'd like to leave us with a quote from Mark Twain, who in 1867 said, "Prohibition only drives drunkenness behind doors and into dark places, and does not even cure, or diminish it." I think he was more right than he could have possibly known. Thank you.